Neville Goddard, 1964 lectures, Speaking from Experience, May 8th, 1964. Tonight's subject is Speaking from Experience. There's a conversation that takes place in the book of John between Nicodemus, a member of the Sanhedrin, and Jesus. It's the 3rd chapter, and he said to Nicodemus, "We speak of what we know and bear witness to what we see, but you do not accept our testimony. Excuse me, if I tell you earthly things and you do not believe, how can you believe if I tell you heavenly things?" So here is one who is a member of the Sanhedrin, the highest order in the Jewish faith, and he came at night asking certain questions. Now, he did not really ask. He called him rabbi, and Jesus admitted the fact that he was a teacher. That's what a rabbi is. And then proceeded to instruct him concerning a great mystery and said to him, "You must be born from above. For unless you are born from above, you cannot enter the kingdom of God." Verse 3, and he replied, "Can a man who is old enter a second time into his mother's womb and be born?" And this was answered in a strange way. He said, that which is born from the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. Verse 6, but unless you be born from above, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. The wind blows where it wills, and you hear the sound of it, but you do not know whence it comes or whither it goes. So it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit. Verse 8. If that isn't the first mystical experience, I don't know what is. It literally is it. Then he goes on after the next interruption. This turns into a discourse, really. Began as a dialogue, and finally the whole thing is moving into a discourse like an argument. Then he said, "How can this be? You, a master, a teacher of Israel, and yet you do not understand this? I tell you, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. No one has ever ascended into heaven but he who descended." Verses 10 to 14. All this is compact in a few verses, which you'll find in the first few verses of the 3rd chapter of John. He takes it literally on a physical level. The Greek word translated anew, or again, or from above, is anothin, A-N-O-T-H-I-N. Scholars claim that you can give no other meaning to the word, especially when you read the context, than from above, begotten of God, begotten from above. The birth can be considered either from the father's side, in which case the verb is to beget, or from the mother's side, in which case the verb is to bear. The word here is from the father's side, to beget. It's begotten from above, begotten of God. Now, I tell you from experience, this is literally true. I've had the experience myself. I'm here to tell you from experience, just like Neville just said, yes, literally true. It still blows my mind that we can be from all kinds of different aspects of life, in different faiths, in different bodies, in different colors, and different sizes, and male, female, all the above, and all have a similar experience. The wind is the wind blowing out the back of your head and you taking off in flight, which is what happened to me. Mind-blowing, to say the least. Now, I tell you from experience, this is literally true. He thought you couldn't take it on the physical level. It could not be literal, but he explained that which is begotten, that which is born of the flesh is flesh. What is born of the Spirit is spirit. Nicodemus didn't understand it. He just didn't understand it. Because what man in this world could understand it? Unless he had the experience, or he believed the one who had the experience. So here, the story is literally true. He's speaking of an entirely different age, an age that is not this age at all, where one must have a body equal to that age to exercise a power completely unknown to any man or by any man in this world. An entirely different thing where he's exercising a creative power that is the power of God. So he has to have a body to exercise that power, to use that power, and this body comes from the birth from above, comes from his birth from above. Being born of spirit and still being in the physical gives full definition to the phrase being in the world but not of it. My teacher said that phrase to me at least thousands. I'm going to say at least 1,000 times. I mean, constantly we would say that phrase, in the world but not of it. If you're here on this channel and you're watching these videos, you're typically of that phrase. If you're the opposite of the world, not whatever, if you're the opposite of it, and we know who we're talking about. It's not a bad thing, by the way. It's just a thing. It's a passing thing. It's a state. But if you're in that opposite of in the world but not of it, then these words, this channel won't make sense unless you feel the inclination, or if you feel there's a precocious perspective within you that is drawing you, then it does make sense. But in the world and not of it is the main thing about this rebirth. You're physically here, but your spirit body is what is now newly born. So you're not of the world, you're of the spirit. Now he makes the statement, I came out from the Father and I came into the world. Again, I am leaving the world and ascending to the Father. John 16:28. In these four little phrases, he admits of a pre-existence. I came out from the Father. Well, to come out from the Father is to die. Like a prodigal son, he departed from his father, and the father thought him dead, thought him lost, and said, my son who was lost is found. He was dead and now is alive again. Luke 15:24. So he admits in that departure, I came out from the Father, that he died, I have come into the world. That's incarnation. Again, I am leaving the world and ascending to the Father. And this is also literally true. Man finds it difficult to understand, but in the course of the evening, we will explain it from actual experience. Well, now, let us get down to this level from experience. I have asked you to join with me and share with me your use of the law, that I in turn may encourage everyone who is here to use the law lovingly to expand their world and make it a wonderful world. What a delicious sentence. Because you can be anything in this world that you really want to be if you're willing to be vigilant, to be faithful to the assumption that you are already such a person, if you're willing. Well, a gentleman wrote me this past week and said, on Sunday when we discussed, you reminded me of something that in the interval I had forgotten, that when I discussed possible stories with my producer and he gave me all these stories, I went home boiling and I was so mad because I knew I could conceive of many more wonderful stories than the stories that he suggested. I was so mad when I got home. I was just simply raged. And I said to myself, audibly screaming it out. My wife didn't hear me, but I went upstairs and to the mountains I spoke. I don't have to write for TV. I can write for Broadway shows, write for Broadway plays. I can write books. I can write for pictures. I don't have to write TV scripts. And then I thought, well, now I'll take his most stupid story, but the most stupid of all the ideas that he gave me, and then I'll work on it. So he said, I gave him the challenge. And so that story that I worked on was nominated for an award that year. And of all the stories that I've ever done, it was the one story nominated for an award as the best story of the year. It was his most stupid story, but it was a challenge. So you reminded me on Sunday that a challenge is necessary in this world. So On Monday morning, I felt calm and passive, and I was walking on my usual walk, and I was in a mood of thanking Father. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Father. When suddenly I remembered what you had said the day before on Sunday about a challenge when I took the most stupid story and developed it into what was nominated for an award. And suddenly I heard the loudest, most authoritative voice I have ever heard before. Never heard anything as loud as this with such authority. And I heard it from the depths of my soul, and it is saying to me, and this is what it said, feed me with challenges. How else can I grow? You think it over. Feed me with challenges, exclamation point. How else can I grow? Question mark. As I've told you, God actually became man. Man is the limit of contraction, the limit of opacity. There is no limit to translucence, no limit to expansion, but he took upon himself the limit of contraction, which is man, called Adam. And now Adam has to feed him with challenges that he may create, that he may expand his creative power. For the purpose of the whole thing is simply to create and to develop one's creative talent, one's creative power. So feed me with challenges. How else can I grow? You wouldn't think that God is growing. God grows. God grows forever and forever. God is truth, and truth is a limitless expansion. Forever and forever and forever. So it simply comes down to the limit of contraction. Assumes the challenge that it can give and then creates. He said, I came out and the day before I had a story which my producer accepted and liked, and instantly I threw it into the ash can. I want a bigger and better story, more alive, something more vital, and in 1 hour I had it. I took the challenge. And then in a very sweet way, thanked me for reminding him of what he had told me about this stupid story that he developed to the point of receiving at least the nomination for an award. But in the interval, he had forgotten what he did with that challenge. And now he said to me in the letter that a challenge changes man's consciousness from the passive state into the active state. It's the most wonderful thing in the world to lift man's consciousness to higher and higher levels, a challenge in this world. So I ask you to take what he has given to me, which I am now sharing with you, and use it. And then grow. In growing, God grows. It's all God. God is playing all the parts. So, he very generously gave me in letter form his reaction to our conversation on Sunday, which tonight I can share with you. Now, he knows this now from experience, for he got his story in 1 hour. And a truth that man knows from experience, he knows more thoroughly than he knows anything else in the world, in this world. Or than he can know that same truth in any other way. For instance, I tell you the story and you believe me. All right, so you believe me, but you don't know it as you will know it after you've tested it and you've proved it in the testing. So what you know from experience, you know more thoroughly than you know anything else in this world. So today, he knows that a challenge took his consciousness and turned it from the passive state into the active state, that he had the courage to take a story that was already accepted and liked by his producer and discard it, and in 1 hour come up with a story infinitely better than the one he had discarded. He had the courage to discard one already accepted. Well, that was already money in the bank when you're getting that sort of money for a half-hour script, but he discarded that and took the challenge, and then rose to a higher level. So I share it with you. You take the challenge. Now, another lady, she is here this night, and she said this past week to me, I was talking to some friends, and I said, I remember when. And as I said, I remember when, it dawned upon me, these are Neville's words, the words he used to describe a vision of his. And then I said to myself, but I am not using it. I just put up some shorts today. What's the date? June 4th, that are from Neville from a lecture called The Spirit Gives Life, which I highly recommend. A lot of what's being said right here is in this lecture. The shorts are up on my channel right now, but the long form is The Spirit Gives Life. Highly recommend that Neville lecture, Neville original audio lecture on my channel. And it describes this story. I remember when. Here, the man shared with us his vision, and I haven't used what he gave me. He gave it to me. I'm now talking to my friends, telling them, I remember when, and I myself have not done it. She said, I've just written a letter to my landlord to explain to the landlord that I would be unable this month to meet the rent on time. I'll pay. I've always paid, and I will pay, but this month things are difficult. I cannot pay this month, that is, not on time. Then suddenly, I remember when. Then she began to remember when she cleaned a motel room, a hotel room, a private home, $14 a day. Then she lost herself in the mood. I remember when. Therefore, that implies she's not doing it now. The phone rings, and a former employer who formerly employed her at $10 a day employed her that day at $50 a day. He said, you put in your bill as long as it will take you to you put in your bill as long as it'll take you to organize a certain something, which she did not explain in her letter, and it's $50 a day for the work you're going to do to set this thing in motion. I remember when. As I've told you, that vision was so clear to me, just as clear as this room here when I slipped. I'm on my bed here in this city, and suddenly I'm in this huge mansion on Fifth Avenue, one of these enormous 60 and 70 room mansions, and there were families present. One was the grandfather, one was the next generation, and then the third generation. Grandfather was invisible, but the other two generations, they were present and always discussing grandfather. And they would say, I heard them. I came in spirit, and I heard them discussing grandfather, who made the fortune that they now enjoyed. The mansion and the income from this entrenched wealth they were now enjoying, but they themselves did not make it. They told the story of grandfather, and grandfather said, while standing on an empty lot, I remember when this was an empty lot. And then grandfather would paint a word picture of his desire for that lot and paint it so vividly that everyone saw it as grandfather saw it. That's how he made his fortune. He lived from that moment on in his wish fulfilled. I remember when. I woke, it was about 3 a.m, and I wrote the entire vision out. Then I went back to bed and redreamed the dream. But this time, as I redreamed it, I was grandfather. I had so completely absorbed the message that I found myself in the same mansion with the same people, and I told them that I remember when I'm standing on an empty lot. I remember when this was an empty lot. Then I would paint the word picture of my desire for that lot and paint it so vividly, so graphically, they all saw it. And then I woke. Well, the 41st chapter of the book of Genesis, verse 32, tells us that if the vision is double, the doubling of the vision means this, said Joseph to Pharaoh, that God has fixed it and it will shortly come to pass. God has fixed it. This is fixed now if the vision is doubled. God has fixed it and it will shortly come to pass. So I shared it with you. And now this lady has been coming faithfully over the years, but like all of us, we hear it. It's a thrill at the moment, but we don't carry it into action. She didn't apply it. But the very day she applied it, the phone rings and she is offered $50 a day, not $10 a day. So it was a challenge. She took the challenge that I remember when I only earned $10 a day. Now, you can take the same thing, you can take that same thing. I remember when my income was only and any kind of income, $1,000 a week, you can make that. You think it's crazy? Nothing is impossible to God. Let's do it right now. I remember when. Okay, I just did it. I was imagining leveling for someone else just in case you were curious, and their income level. Feed me with challenges. How else can I grow? That's the story of God to a friend who is here this night. Feed me with challenges. How else can I grow? And so if your challenge is that you want, and you name it, I know in my own case, when I was opposed by my teacher in elocution, it was her opposition to my voice and her statement that I could never in eternity earn $1 using my voice. And she used me as the guinea pig, one of the class of 40. And she made me step forward and then pointed her finger at Neville and said, "You see, Neville, listen to him. He will never be able to use his voice to earn $1. So just watch all that he does, listen to him, and avoid it." That's a teacher. I am the only one of the class of 40 using a voice and thoughts behind it to earn a living, and the other 39 are elsewhere. What are they doing? I don't know, but not one of them ever entered the theater, not one. Not one entered any other part of life where the voice would be used. And she was the great teacher of elocution. But this is where it's important. This is the very, very pivotal point right here. But she challenged me. And that was my challenge. I would not allow myself to waste my father's $600. He could ill afford to give me $600 to go to a dramatic school for 6 months and then come out and be a failure. I knew it in my heart I couldn't do that to him, so I just would not allow it. So I say to everyone, everything in this world is possible if you will now accept the challenge. Because who is accepting it? God is accepting it. Because God is your own wonderful human imagination. Just reading that, I was only on the God word, the first God of those two gods, and I was already seeing the end of the sentence because I'm already programmed. I was having a discussion with a very good friend today who's driving here from San Diego right now, and he says, and we were talking about this whole point, I came across a video that I shared with him, and I says, the video was about speaking and Gen Z's fear of speaking and or things along the line of, if you're not going to do it, and it's just exactly what Neville's saying right here, if you're not going to do it and accept the challenge to speak clearly and articulate, and we already know that's going to have a severe impact on your income level, that's for sure. The use of the English language is the primary thing that people pay attention to about you, period. So if you have a fear of speaking, the best thing to do is to accept the challenge. But we were discussing this concept, and we were discussing this other concept of if it's not you imagining, someone else is doing it for you. So in this video, and I'll put it in the description, it's a very good video, I think. He is selling, he's pitching something, he's selling it, this YouTube person, but it is worthy of the message in this video that most of the words you use and the programming you've accepted through song, through music, 2 or 3 hours a day listening to that music, that your vocabulary base is a certain container full of the words you've heard there through music and or TV, news, whatever. And that when you go to express yourself, you've only got this limited layer that you've taken in consistently that then becomes this limited piece that then you express yourself with, which is very limitation. So the challenge is, and I'll put the video there. It's a very interesting video. Some ideas. You always want new ideas in there. Accept the challenge. The part of the video I want to share, though, is to accept the challenge of this. Expand. And I commented to my buddy, I says, well, the beauty of being so focused on Neville all the time is I'm taking in Neville's ideas all the time. I mean, if I'm not with my headphones, they're not in here, But if I don't have my headphones on, it's just constantly Neville for three plus years already, 3.5 years almost, right? It is 3.5 years. And it's a consistent. And so what's coming out here is more of what's going in there. So that's exactly how you reprogram you and what you say and how you express and who you are. You accept the challenge. Look at the video. It's pretty interesting. Now, we'll take you through the book from now to the end of the series, the 26th of this month, and show you how the book is so true. Every word of it is true and literally true on deeper levels of the soul. Here's a friend tonight. He's in the audience, and this happened last week. You've heard this story time and again of the crucifixion and the voice that said, "Behold, I say unto you today, you will be with me in paradise." Luke 23:43. Well, this lad, he's just a lad. He found himself in vision in a theater, and here was this huge big screen. To the left of the screen is a cross almost his height or a little bit more than his height. Then a man suddenly appeared out of nowhere, walked to the cross, turned around and faced the audience, and then stretched his hands out and fused with the cross. Then a voice said, "I say unto you today, you will be with me in paradise for a little while." I can't throw any light on it, but at least he's honest and he's telling me exactly what he heard. And when a vision breaks into words, then deity is present. The very presence of deity is confirmed as the vision breaks into words, as told us in the 3rd of Exodus, verse 4. Hear from the bush, and suddenly the vision breaks into words, and the very moment it breaks into words, the revelation begins. Say, I am has sent you. Verse 14. And the presence of deity is always confirmed whenever the vision breaks into words. So in this case, the vision broke into words. Now what the tagline is, which is not recorded in Scripture, for a little while. I do not know. He wrote me this letter just a few days ago, and I do not know. It has not been revealed to me why the tagline. But it's obvious what the first part of it is. Behold, I say unto you today, you will be with me in paradise. But why for a little while? Yet it does not tell us that because of the instant, or rather forever, expansion of God, all things are only for a season. It's always a growth and a growth and a growth, forever and forever. So he has shared that with me, and I have shared it with you. But I tell you from my own experience in Scripture is true. But I tell you from my own experience, everything in Scripture is true. I have had almost every experience that is recorded in the Gospels concerning Jesus Christ, from the birth through to the very end, every one. I have not had the story of Lazarus. No, I haven't had that one. But I've had the dove. I've had all the stories of Scripture as recorded. They take place in the soul of man. They don't take place on the outside at all. For it is said of him, we know where this man came from. We know his origin. And when the Christ comes, no one will know where he comes from. So they rejected him because they knew his origin. But when Christ comes, so they thought, he will emerge in some strange, mysterious way. And he does, but he comes in a mysterious way in man that man himself did not know. Remember, you've got a spirit existing when he comes from a spirit, meaning born from above. The person of flesh, who now dwells in spirit in the world, but not of it, because you have the spirit body as well as the physical body, the flesh body. So you've got both layers. So when the spirit of you says, I am he, and those around you don't believe you are he because they're looking at your flesh body, because they are of flesh. They're not of spirit yet. Now listen to the words that we started off with the meeting. He tells us he's only talking of things that he knows. I tell you what I know and bear witness to what I've seen, and you will not accept my testimony. He's only testifying what he's actually experienced, what he's seen, and they will not accept his testimony. Now, if I tell you of earthly things and you will not believe, how can you believe if I tell you heavenly things? So he tells them earthly things, all the signs of earthly things, all the signs of health, transforming a man who's poor into a man who is rich, a man who could not sell a material into one who sells all that he can write, a man who was unwell into a man who never felt better in his life. So he transforms all this, and they will not believe what he tells them of how he did it. I can vouch for that completely. He only did it in his imagination. For he said, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and you will. That's all that you do. Mark 11:24. Well, if he could convince himself of the reality of what he's now imagining, then it should externalize itself if that principle is true. Stands to reason, right? Well, it did, but he told them how he did it. They couldn't believe that. They wanted some other kind of a trick, and he's telling them that this is all that you do. When you know what you want, believe that you have it, and you have it. And if one can get to that point of belief, then everything would come into this world based upon the great law of Israel. So he recited the entire story for them. In the 78th Psalm, the whole history of Israel is recorded. He said, lend me your ears, or let me have your ears, your understanding, your attention, and I will open my mouth in a parable and speak in dark sayings as of old. Verse 1. And then he tells them he will tell them all the things that the fathers said that everyone should hear. And then carry it on to the next generation, and the next generation, and the next generation, and all the unborn generations, all the wonders that God wrought. In the very end, it comes to David in the very end of this very long chapter, the 78th, which is a chapter by Asaph, A-S-A-P-H, Asaph. And Asaph means the gatherer. He gathers all these things together. We have 12 Psalms by Asaph, the 73rd through the 83rd, and then the 50th, and the 50th is the one where, if I were hungry, I wouldn't tell you, for the earth is mine, and all that is in it. The cattle on 1,000 hills, they're mine. Verses 10 and 12. And were I hungry, I would slay and eat. Why should I tell you when it's all mine? That's the first psalm that he gave us, the 50th. Then he gave us the other 11, the 73rd through the 83rd. And the name simply means to gather together. He gathers all the traditions, all the stories of the fathers, and he tells them to the next generation, and tells them to tell it to the next generation, and keep on telling it until one day they experience it. And so we tell you, and then one after the other has an experience. The one this day was the cross. He experienced it. He knows how true that story is, but what are we told in Scripture? O you foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you, before whose eyes Jesus Christ was publicly portrayed as crucified? Isn't it a drama vicariously done? Before whose eyes Jesus Christ was publicly portrayed as crucified. Let me ask you only this. Did you receive the Spirit by the working of the law, or by hearing with faith? Are you so foolish? Having begun with the Spirit, are you now ending with the flesh? Galatians 3:1. It takes place in spirit, not in flesh. No one was crucified physically. Yes, undoubtedly in this barbarous world of ours, tens of thousands of men, undoubtedly by some tyrant, some sadist, were crucified. Undoubtedly. But that's not the story. The crucifixion is in spirit, and I know from my own personal experience, it is in spirit, for I was, and it's the most glorious sensation in the world. You can't conceive of the thrill, the joy when the vortices nail you to this garment, when each hand, each foot, side, and head become a vortex, and these vortices, 6 of them, nail you to this body. And the thrill, it's sheer ecstasy when you have it done, and you hear the words, which means God's presence is here. And then God speaks from the depths of your soul. I laid myself down within you to sleep. And as I slept, I dreamed a dream. I dreamed, yes, I dreamed that I am you. He's dreaming that he's you. Now, to come back to our friend, feed me with challenges. I'm dreaming that I'm you. I'm your very being, your own wonderful I amness is God. God can do anything. All things are possible to God. So feed me with challenges. How else can I grow? And so be bold enough to take something that you have written, that you have presented, that you have accepted and liked, and you know that's money in the bank, and throw it into the ash can. Not good enough. And then take a challenge, something more vital, something more wonderful, something more thrilling, and write it, and in 1 hour get it. Get something far better than what you're quite willing, just for money's sake, to accept, because there's money for you. So you take it this night and take a large sum. If anyone had told you when I worked at Macy's for, $18 a week and did everything in the place for $18, if anyone told me then that I would in the not too far future be making $500 a week, why, I would have laughed at them. But I did. Well, we finally have Neville's income level from his lecturing, $500 a week. And I don't know when that was. This is 1964. He's dictating this lecture, but I don't know when he started working at the $500 a week, which has to be right after he was fired. So that takes us back into I'm guessing the 30s. But I did. One day I quit Macy's. I don't mean fired. I was fired from JCPenney. So I worked for JCPenney, and they gave me $22 a week, and one day they fired me. I asked them why. What have I done? What's wrong? They said, nothing's wrong, but we have an economy in this country that when things are slow, we let people off. You've been working here for a year and a half, and so we just simply have to economize, and so you have to go. I love Neville's naivete at the time. Why? What's going on? I'm doing my part. What's wrong with you doing your part? I said, where I come from, you fire a person because he's done something that is wrong. That if I've stolen or if I've done something that is wrong, causing the company loss, fire me. But don't fire me because of certain strange trends in this world. But that's how we operate, they said to me. Well, they thought, this man, he's a boy and he's stupid and he's foolish. We'll give him a letter and send him over to Macy's. I know Neville had to be naive. I know what that is. I know what that means, and I know the experience of it. I know it completely, and I love my naivete, my past naivete especially. It's kind of a guard. It's a built-in guard you don't realize when you're completely naive. It's just, it's wonderful. I think it's part of the mix. But I can imagine Neville naive as all get out, man. What do you mean? Fired? All right. They wrote me a letter and sent me to his friend. Well, they thought, let me start at this last sentence. Well, they thought, this man, he's a boy and he's stupid and he's foolish. We'll give him a letter and send him over to Macy's. So they did. He wrote me a little letter and sent me to his friend who was the employment agency at Macy's. So I moved to Macy's and gave my little letter. They said, we can't start you at $22.50 a week. We'll start you at $18. So, all right, I have to pay rent, so they started me at $18. So I worked there for a year, and one day I said to myself, you're getting nowhere fast. Still making $18 a week and doing everything that they ask you to do because you don't want to be fired. I was just saying that on the phone today with my buddy who's driving here right now from San Diego. I was just saying that same thing. I was telling him, I go, there's a point where I got working for my previous employer where I was taking the trash cans out every week. I said this exact thing on the phone a little while ago. I said I was taking the trash cans out each week, and then each week would come faster and faster. And I go, I was just going to the place I was working, and before I knew it, I was taking my trash cans out at home again and again and again, and trash cans and trash cans, and nothing was changing. Nothing was changing. I was in this like weird psychological place, but I was perceptive enough to realize it was happening. It's exactly what Neville's talking about. I worked there for a year, and one day I said to myself, you're getting nowhere fast. Still making $18 a week and doing everything that they ask you to do because you don't want to be fired. So I had the courage to quit without a nickel in my pocket. And 6 months later, I was making $500 a week as a dancer. There it is. That's where he's making his money. As a dancer. I don't know if he's going to say it, but I presume that he just said, I can do this, and just did it. I remember in a lecture somewhere, and hopefully it's right here, but I remember, he just did it. Went off to England, $500 a week. I never danced in my life before. Here it is. Excuse me, Neville. I never danced in my life before, save ballroom dancing. I told my dancing partner when she said, can you dance? Certainly I can dance. She said, all right, let me see. Well, I said, I danced with someone else. I'll dance with you. And so that's how it started. So off to England, we got 100 pounds. In those days, a pound was worth $4.84. Not today's $2.80. And I got 100 pounds a week dancing in London for 3 months. From Macy's, $18 a week. So I say, you take a challenge. You simply throw yourself out completely and walk on the water and either go down and drown or simply live better. And this is exactly how I started my business. If anybody's thinking about starting their business, I started mine with the same exact gumption. It was a challenge. And I might as well tell you the story very fast. I'll tell a very short version of it. I was working for Home Depot, and I got out of the Navy, went to Home Depot for a little under a year. Then I went to McDonnell Douglas. Then I went back to Home Depot. Then I went to a banana boat. Then I went back to I was going back and forth to Home Depot like a yo-yo. I think on my third return, my brother-in-law, he's the one who got me in at Home Depot right when I got out of the Navy. He was a Marine here in Long Beach as a lifeguard, believe it or not. I don't know how he got that duty, but my sister met him somewhere downtown Long Beach because she worked for the Long Beach Police Department. And so they ended up getting married, having a child. And I got out of the Navy, 88 November. He got me in at the Home Depot right here in Long Beach. The very, one of the first ones out here on the West Coast. Anyway, I'm working in and out of the Home Depot several years, maybe 3 or 4 times over 5 years, something like that. And it comes time for me to get a job as a manufacturer's rep. And I've had other small jobs in between this story, but I became a manufacturer's rep for a company that sold stuff to Home Depot, cabinets. So while in the Home Depot, I was always working on those cabinets. So then I became I was always putting them together and putting up displays and doing all that stuff, just stuff, displays. And then I went to work for the manufacturer of the cabinets because I had a friend who got a job there and he pulled me in. He pulled a lot of us in, which was great. Then from there, my buddy, who was my I guess you can call my boss or manager or whatever, he became my best man, by the way, at my wedding. But he ended up moving regions from Southern California to Seattle. And so then he couldn't find contractors. He would take them to the Home Depots and say, this is what I want you to do. And they'd go, you're crazy. I'm not doing this. They couldn't find anybody for the life of them. And I go, hey, I know how to do that stuff. And he had a contractor down here that was making all this money. And I go, oh, ding, ding, ding. I can do that stuff. Just I'll get my contractor's license, get some liability insurance, and that's easy. This is too easy to do. So with no experience, except knowing how to make those displays, because I've done it before, and a hammer and a couple drills, I called my brother, brought him in, brought my cousin in. We got in the car and we drove off with no experience, just the challenge of it. Drove literally north to Reno, or basically whatever that freeway is to go to Reno. Made a right, went to Reno, did some work there. couple Home Depots, then took off to Denver and remodeled a bunch of stores there, then came back to Seattle, and that's where we started the business. All without experience, just the challenge of it. That's why I wanted to tell you this story. This is a longer story, but this is the short version. The challenge is all you need. My wife said to me one day after about 3 or 4 years of this, or two or 3 years, she says, "How did you learn to do this stuff?" I told her, I go, "I didn't know how to do any of this. I just knew I could. That's all that I knew." When she asked me that question, I was laughing. I was like, I didn't know any. I really didn't know any of it. So we both learned how to run a business. We got the QuickBooks. Back then it was on a CD, etc. And got the QuickBooks and just started doing the invoicing. And you go through the steps one after the other. Chambers of Commerce, get by hiring accountants, all this stuff. All that stuff was all the beginning of it was just simply a challenge. I can do that. I know I can do that. And just put one step in front of the other. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter what it is. It's a challenge. It's your challenge. Go for it. What do you got to lose? So here, I'm speaking from experience. I'm not theorizing. When I tell you I've done it, I've taken God's word just as he told me and then stepped right out and did it. When no power in this world would have taken me out of our armed forces, God took me out with an honorable discharge. Greatest story ever. No power in the world could have taken me out, but God took me out. I simply assumed that I was out and slept night after night in the assumption that I am home as an honorably discharged civilian. In 9 days, the very man who refused it called me in and then discharged me. Then I was on a train back to New York City, so again, I'm speaking from experience. I am not theorizing when I tell you that God can do anything in this world if you trust him. Where is he? Right here. Do you trust your own imagination? That's him. He's trustworthy. He's right there. Hold him responsible. Hold him trustworthy. And so in your wonderful field this night, dream the most noble dream in the world for yourself and for others. Take a challenge, a real challenge, and then fall asleep in the assumption that you are already such a person, and then let it work. It'll work. Work like a charm. Not one person in this world need you call or write to ask to help in any way. If 1,000 are necessary, 1,000 will respond. And you don't have to seek the 1,000, they'll come. Whatever it takes will come. I got to throw this in there. We were on the road and we would get hotels and we would just get sleeping bags. And, you know, my wife and I would take the bed and my brother would sleep bag over there and my cousin over there and another friend of his that we brought in would sleep over here. And we just crowd up in a little room, hotel room, Motel 6 or something, and just sleep in there. Then when I was going through Portland, I had 2 friends who lived there. Well, I'd call them up. Hey, man, can we stay at your place? We're traveling through and doing work. Yeah, sure. No problem. We have air mattresses. Cool. We got space. My best friend who just texted me right now, and we were just talking to him last night about this Mexican food we're going to enjoy. He's coming to town. We're going to go watch a band down at the Belly Up Tavern in Solana Beach. What's it called? I got to share it with you because it's a great band. Badfish coming up. He was living in Portland. Hey, can we stay on your floor? Yes. Okay, no problem. Air mattresses, like things you put on the pool, that's one person, or as a queen size or a full size. That's how we did it. We took the challenge. We started going to do the work. It was on the road. All of it was on the road. Then we didn't care what was in or out of our wallet. It was a miracle that I just happened to call my friends, best friends I grew up with, who lived there in Portland. After we didn't exhaust Rick, but we went to there and then we went to Seattle. Thanks. Thank you very much. Next time we were coming through, I don't know what Rick was doing, but I ended up calling Jeff, and Jeff was there, lived there also. Well, he lived above a bar. I go, it's just me and Robert. Can we stay on your floor? Yes. It's automatic. It was so automatic, we fed the challenge, and we stepped into the challenge. We didn't pre-plan any place we were staying or not staying, or we didn't pre-plan, which was the toughest part of this whole thing, was all the work you got to do before the money's finally coming at you, because it was a 60 days out kind of company. All the checks would come in 60 days after. So you had to keep working and then build up this net return. But it was everybody who needed to step in because you had faith in him, you found him trustworthy. Everybody that needed to step in, stepped in. The friends were there. They let us sleep on the floor. Then when we did this Denver trip at the very beginning, like I was just describing, my manager knew some other reps that were out there, and he said, hey, man, can they stay at your place? He must have talked to them because when we went there, I knew the guy, and he said, hey, you guys can stay at my place. So he must have prepped them because we were all staying there. Me, my wife, and three or four employees in a nice big apartment, and we were just staying there. Things come together for you when you accept the challenge. You create the challenge by accepting it, and you create the success by imagining it and sleeping in that state of the wish fulfilled. The only reason I'm telling you my personal stories here of this experience is because you need to see it, that it's your challenge, and everything will step in to bring you to the completion of it when you imagine it as fulfilled, especially as you're falling asleep. Whatever it takes will come. So here in this speaking from experience, he said his brothers did not believe him because they knew him. He said to them, my time has not yet come, but your time is always here. John 7:6. Now there's a profound statement, and who will believe it? If I tell you earthly things and you won't believe it, how would you believe it if I told you heavenly things? Your time is always here, he said, but my time is not yet come. You know what it means? This whole vast world of ours is forever. Just as it is now, at this moment in time. What took place last year in the month of November, on the day of the 22nd of November, is always taking place forever and forever in time. That's the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Because this is 1964 and this is May. That was last November 22nd. It is always taking place. Everything in the world is taking place on this level. So your time is always here. But my time is not yet come. He's telling you of an entirely different world with a different use of power, different creativity, where man is lifted off this world of recurrence and he enters that world that is creative, one with God. But who understands it? If you did not slip in time and see that it hasn't passed away, that the present is not receding into the past, this present is advancing into the future has already passed, question mark? It's a wheel. Exactly what my teacher showed me when I first asked her, how does this all work? What is this great mystery? That's exactly what I said to her, not mystery. I just said, how does all this work? That's all I asked. She drew that wheel and put the dot in the middle and said, all that is God right there. That's that dot. Now from him come all of us. And she drew all these lines. That's you, that's me, that's your brother, your mother, your sister, your father, everybody. It's because we live one of these lines. And when we leave, she probably said die at the time, we just go to another one. And I was dumbfounded, but curious, infinitely curious when I saw that image. And I just said, what do you do here? Oh, I give readings, consultations, and I teach classes, and I go, oh, I got to try this. Sign me up. And that's how it started with her. If you did not slip in time and see that it hasn't passed away and the present is not receding into the past, this present is advancing into the future has already passed. It's a wheel. You're only coming upon phenomena that's already old, and therefore your time is always here, but my time has not yet come. You've heard the phrase, there's no such thing as an original thought. Then he repeats it, and he uses it a little bit differently. And he said, not yet fully come. He knows he is moving into an entirely different world because he's had the experiences foretold in Scripture. And so, all these were foretold: the birth, the awakening, the descent, the discovery of the fatherhood, the ascent, the dove. All of these things are the signs of one's departure from this time. He just listed 6. Let's go over them again. And so all these were foretold: the birth, the awakening, the descent, the discovery of the fatherhood, the ascent, the dove. All of these are the signs of one's departure from this time. A couple of those happened at the same time for Neville. So when Paul made the statement that the time of my departure has come, I have fought the good fight and I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness. He knew from the experiences in himself, 2 Timothy 4:7. For he said in his confession in the book of Galatians, when it pleased God to reveal his Son in me, I conferred not with the flesh and blood. Galatians 1:16. It pleased God! Exclamation point. What a statement. What pleases God? If you read the Bible carefully, only one thing in this world displeases him, and you know what that is. You read this in the 11th chapter of the book of Hebrews: without faith, it is impossible to please him. Verse 6. He's only right there. So you can't please God by any act of yours if it is not an act of faith. So challenge me. Bring me challenges. How else can I grow? Have confidence in me, in my ability to create. And bring me a challenge, something big, something terrific. How else can I create? So without faith, it is impossible to please God. So when he said, and when it pleased God to reveal his Son in me, I conferred not with flesh and blood. He confesses that the Son was unveiled in him. And he saw the mystery. Then he asked all those who listened to him to look upon him as a steward of the mysteries of God, for they all awoke within him. So tonight, please God. How would you please God? Take the most fantastic dream that is not yet realized, that seems impossible, and then hold God trustworthy. Assume that you've realized it and hold him trustworthy. Challenge God to use his creative talent to create that dream in your world so that you have experienced it. That's how you please God. So when it pleased God, and so through faith one day he will take the veil and tear it apart, and then unveil within you the series of mystical experiences, which series will reveal you to who you really are. For when it's unveiled, he's only unveiling himself. He's reached the end of his creative power. What he intended when he contracted himself and became you. He's reached the end of his creative power, what he intended when he contracted himself and became you. So he uses you. Puts you through all the furnaces in the world. Because you and he are one. You are his contraction. So when this comes to an end and you awake as God Everyone eventually will awake as God. Anybody felt the furnaces? Anybody feel the heat? My brother and I were in Seattle when I was visiting him recently, and we were at a birthday party, and it was held at a bar where he lives or near him. And we went in there and we were talking to the gals, and he was introducing me to the waitresses. There were two bartendresses, and he apparently forgot their names. He hadn't been there in a while, I guess. And the second one had said to him, "I told you my name 13 times and you don't remember it still. It's Amanda," something like this. And we had left and we went across the street to go to the sandwich, one of those food trucks for a Philly. And we were walking back and we were talking about her, and I said, I guess she just needs more time in the furnace. No, I said, I guess she just needs more time in the oven. And he goes, what does that mean? And then I had to explain the whole concept that we're going over right now. The furnaces of affliction. And she had all this anger, this, whatever it was, whatever her thing was. And I tried to imagine lovingly, but it was a very busy, activity-laden thing. I can imagine right now lovingly for her any moment. But the point is, at that moment, I said she needs more time in the oven. But everyone eventually will awake as God. She will, I will, he will, all of us. So here, let us take what others have given us, and in their generosity, use it. My friend was wise enough and generous enough and modest enough with herself to say, while she was telling the story, it dawned upon her that she had never really tried it. I remember when. And yet the very moment she tried it, the phone calls, and she's getting $50 rather than 10. And so you just hear it, put it to the test. I remember when, I'm going to do this one out loud. I remember when you were only listening to this video and you weren't commenting on the successes you were experiencing. I remember when you were only watching this video and you weren't yet commenting on all the successes you were now experiencing. I remember when. This chap who wrote and got all that he wanted, a nice acceptance and a feeling that the man liked it, and then he threw it in the ash can. That wasn't good enough. And then he took a challenge, and in an hour, the whole thing inflamed his mind, and so he was raised from the passive state into the active state. And the whole thing came through in 1 hour. I know in my own case, I brought back a manuscript that thick from Barbados, 1946, and while at sea, this vision happened. Here I was lifted up, and I saw this fantastic sea of humanity, and when I walked by, they were all transformed from their unlovely states into the most perfect, most beautiful states imaginable. I took my manuscript and tore it up and threw it away. Didn't even bring it back with me, and I labored on it for months. I spent 5 months in Barbados, and so I labored on this manuscript, and I brought it back thinking I'd have a nice manuscript from my publisher. After this experience, I took that manuscript and threw it overboard. Didn't redeem one page of it. And then in 1 hour, of course, it isn't a long thing, it's a tiny little pamphlet, but in 1 hour, the whole thing poured through me. I sat down and wrote the whole thing in an hour and then sent it off, and it was published. It just came that fast. I couldn't possibly have gone to press with what I brought back after 5 months of labor. This whole thing just came like fire. And that had to be it. Just a little tiny thing called the search. But it poured out. And if you ask my wife what she thinks of all my books, the first one she would pick is The Search, because it came that way. The same thing is true of Your Faith is Your Fortune. I took care of a doctor. He was a dope fiend, a brilliant surgeon, and told me that when he was under the dope, he could He did his best surgery. By the way, Your Faith is Your Fortune is an amazing compilation on this channel. I highly recommend it, not for the me of it, but for the Neville of it. I read that book and put it in my own commentary. It is an amazing book. I mean to tell you. 27 chapters, I believe. Holy mackerel. Long video, of course. Worth it. For 7 years, this dope fiend doctor, brilliant surgeon, he said when he was under the dope, he did his best surgery. Fascinating. You'll find that in those 3 books I want to say again, The Education of Oversoul 7, The Further Education of Oversoul 7, and Oversoul 7 and the Museum of Time. That came to me while I was driving yesterday. Those are the 3 books about getting in and out of time. And in fact, there is a story in the Museum of Time about a doctor who is a dope fiend. I don't know why it ties in here, but just what I mentioned the name of, I thought I'd mention the name of those books in case you're curious and want to read some killer fiction. Killer good stuff. For 7 years, he had this most fantastic private hospital and with about a dozen doctors under him. Then he took the needle and became a victim of his own practice. And I took him. Because he was a very prominent doctor, they allowed me to do what I could with him. So with the consent of New York City's head of the dope ring, that is the police department, they allowed me to take him to a hotel. So I did and took him there for 2 weeks. Wow. He was stark raving mad. If you left him for 1 second, he's in the nude, down the hallway, on the street, and we're on the 20th floor. So this day, watching him, I was completely, blank space, just watching him because he was on the bed. I didn't know what he would do the next second. Here I am with my yellow papers and pencils, and I wrote, "Your faith is your fortune." It came out in a matter, I would say, 48 hours, the whole thing. Talking on the inside. I put down 13 chapters one time for a numerology book because, again, that was my passion. That was my favorite study with Sylvia. And I put down 13 chapters like, these are perfect. And I was like, these 13 chapters cover every single thing I would ever want to cover on the topic. And I closed up that little memo book and I haven't found it. It's floating somewhere. But I have no interest in writing that book anymore. It's the funny thing. It's just sometimes it's ideas pour through you because that was all pre-Neville. That was at least 10 years ago, probably. But here I am with my yellow papers and pencils, and I wrote, "Your faith is your fortune." It came out in a matter, I would say, 48 hours, the whole thing talking on the inside. The voice is talking and dictating, and everything is being dictated and came out that way. So, your faith is your fortune is simply from the depth. I only put it down. I wasn't concocting it. It simply poured out. The whole thing poured out. When I took the manuscript and turned it into my chap to correct it, there was practically nothing, not a thing he had to do with it, simply poured out. All because I took the challenge to take care of a friend who was a dope fiend. And Scotty was a wonderful man, grand fella, but he simply became the victim of his own practice. So I watched him, and while I'm watching him and getting more and more sleepy, because day in and day out, you just can't get any sleep, like watching a baby. And so suddenly this thing began to pour out of me. And I could hear the words in the depths of my soul dictating, something on the inside talking. I simply wrote down what they were telling me, and your faith is your fortune came that way. And the search came. After 5 months of labor on a large manuscript, which I discarded. So my friend is sharing with us this night, feed me challenges. How else can I grow? So tonight you take a challenge as we go into the silence. Take the most wonderful challenge and then hold God trustworthy. Now let us go. All right, good. That's a good one. That was a good one. Now, are there any questions, please? When the Bible says, in my Father's house, there are many mansions, I'm trying to understand when you say everything is here and we move into those states. For instance, you have moved into a state as a lecturer, haven't you? Answer, yes. And the Kennedy, next question, and a Kennedy has moved into a state when he was shot. All these states are here like the many mansions, is that right? Yes. Question again, if so, if we move into poverty, we have moved into that state, or we move into richness or illness, we moved into that state. Neville, granted. Question again, next one, and they're all right here? Answer, Neville, the thing is to become selective. You don't go into a restaurant and say, bring me a dinner. You say, bring me a menu, and then you order. You're going to pay for it and you want proper service. If he throws it at you, you're going to complain because you're paying for it. You go into a place and you order a dress. You don't say, bring me a dress. You become selective. And you go through dozens and dozens of dresses. Then you pick out the one you think that you need to fill your wardrobe. And so you may need a brown. They have the most beautiful blues in the world. But you don't need, at this moment, a blue dress. You want a brown to complete the wardrobe. So you look through stacks and stacks of dresses and you find what you want. Yet they're all there. Everything is here, and man must become selective and discriminating in everything that he does in this world. The more discriminating he is, well, the better. You simply select it and you move into it. They're only states, infinite states, but you move from one state, leave the state alone for someone else to enter if they want to enter it, and then move into another state. Poverty into wealth. You leave poverty, it's a state. The state's not going to disappear. It's always there. Every state exists forever and forever and forever. But you don't have to maintain an active dwelling in that state. You can move into the state opposite and then dwell there forever by holding him trustworthy that it's okay to be there. It's just a state. Now, we think we're going to change poverty in this land. You can't change states, can't do it. If you took all the money in the world, divided it up equally, in 24 hours, Rockefeller would still be rich and the other fellow would still be poor. Go right down again. There used to be a lecturer and he had a system. He had a huge big glass bowl and he'd fill it with all kinds of nuts. I love this story. He had walnuts and other kinds of nuts, all kinds of nuts. And then he would take the bowl and he would say, life is like this. It's a constant rhythm. You can't stop it. And he would take the biggest nut, the big walnut, and put it at the very bottom. He would show it to you in his hand and take it and put it right at the very bottom. But he said, you can't stop life. And he started shaking this bowl. And in no time, up came the walnut, the big walnut to the very top again. And the little fellas, of course, he had a wonderful line. He would say, I hear someone squeaking down below. And he would say, the little one down below is saying, you started me there in life. And if you could only start me at the top, I would be all right. Well, so you started me at the bottom, start me at the top. So he goes all the way down to the bottom of the bowl, brings a little nut up, puts it obviously before all eyes, the very top. But you can't stop life. It's a rhythm. It's just shaking. And the little fella will go all the way down to the bottom. So why pick out the little one? Pick out something noble in this world. Something grand in this world. And remain faithful to it. Good night. Oh my God. Man, oh man, how does he do it? He weaves in the promise with the law. Heavy on the promise. But there's a lot of law in here, man. A lot of law in this one lecture. Speaking from experience, May 8th, 1964. We'll see you in the next one.